Project 21, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chair Rogers, Ranking Member Pallone, and members of this committee, I thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Donna Jackson. I'm the Director of Membership Development for Project 21, the Black Leadership Network of the National Center for Public Policy Research. Project 21 is one of the oldest and largest Black conservative think tanks in the country. Our hundreds of members come from all walks of life, from small business owners, law enforcement, healthcare workers, teachers, energy industry workers, clergy, healthcare workers, both professional and non-professional. Most of us are not career activists, lawyers, or lobbyists, and more than a few of us actually live in the communities we hope to improve. I applaud this committee for kicking off a new session of Congress by looking at increasing domestic energy supplies and reducing energy costs. Needless to say, these costs are tough enough on the middle class, but they are even tougher and on those struggling to reach the middle class. In fact, they're actually harder than you may think. The U.S. Energy and Information Administration had some very useful statistics. It talked about the problems that Americans have in paying their energy bills. 1/3 struggle to pay their energy bills. 1/5 of them have to forego necessities. But of course, these numbers are double, nearly double for minority communities. And this report was actually a couple of years old, so added inflation makes it even that much harder. But perhaps even more damaging is their immediate difficulty of paying for sky-high energy bills, making it from paycheck to paycheck, and the long-term barriers to upward mobility and achieving a piece of the American dream. In so many ways, it's painful and unaffordable. Domestic energy is part of the ticket out of poverty. And we have so much of it, so much of it. For example, we see the entrepreneurial spirit of the Black community. In many Black-owned businesses and small-owned businesses, these businesses are struggling with and failing under the weight of high energy costs. And they also have regulatory compliances that they barely can afford. And it's disproportionately impacting small businesses that really want to make it in this country. It all adds up to a regressive tax on those seeking to better themselves, their families, and their communities by owning and operating their own businesses. Unaffordable energy means the individuals have less to spend on necessities. The industrial employment has historically led to the emergence of a vibrant Black middle class. But what we're seeing is these energy costs are destroying these high-paying gateway jobs for low-income and minority communities. And we have very few options to earn money to be able to make it into the middle class. Energy industry itself represents a very reliable source of well-paying jobs for people that don't have the options of being able to participate in the keyboard industry. And yet we're destroying those options for these individuals who have the American spirit, who want to do better, want to be self-reliant and not dependent on government assistance. We should not be making minority and low-income individuals an afterthought in saving this planet. Their lives matter. Our lives matter. And I applaud you that you're considering the fact of the hardships that unaffordable energy poses to people like me who have self-esteem, self-respect, and we want to be a part of this great American experience. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will hear from Dr. Anna Unruh Cohen, former Majority Staff Director of the U.S. House Select Committee on Climate. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Rogers, Ranking Member Pallone, and the members of the committee. I am Anna Unruh Cohen, and I most recently served as the Majority Staff Director for the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. For a climate scientist turned congressional staffer, it will be hard to top serving as Staff Director for the Select Committee during the last 4 years under the leadership of Representative Kathy Castor and with other members of this committee while Congress passed the most consequential climate and clean energy laws in U.S. history. The last 4 years have underscored how energy, climate, and economic security are tied together. Between the economic impact of pre-vaccine COVID lockdowns, ongoing supply chain disruptions, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and extreme weather events, it's become clearer than ever that the United States needs to invest in building an energy economy that meets the needs of the 21st century. To thrive, we will need affordable energy that addresses the climate crisis, improves public health, and reduces our reliance on volatile global powers and their resources. The legislation enacted in the 116th and 117th Congresses, especially the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act, make critical down payments on achieving those goals. We are already seeing the benefits of these laws accrue across America. Since the enactment of the IRA in August 2022, almost $90 billion in clean energy projects have been announced, initiating new economic development opportunities across the country. And we will see even more in the coming years. The need for the clean energy transition is clear and growing in urgency. The United States faced $35 billion extreme weather and climate-related disasters in 2021 and 2022, with a cumulative price tag of more than $180 billion in direct economic losses alone. Other countries around the world have faced devastating heat waves, droughts, and floods in recent years. Without comprehensive climate action, the science points toward continued disasters with regional, national, and global consequences. The climate crisis and need for energy security will require governments at all levels to increase their engagement on energy and climate policies, to realize the potential created by the new laws, and to use the available tools to ease impacts on families when new climate and energy challenges arise. Congress, and especially this committee, will need to understand and respond to the increasingly dynamic global energy landscape to maintain U.S. global leadership and competitiveness. Successful energy and climate legislation must meet the test of cutting climate pollution guided by science, reducing energy costs on families, advancing equity and justice, and creating good family-sustaining jobs. As this committee takes up energy and climate legislation, members should evaluate the bills with these metrics in mind, just as we did at the Select Committee and working with the standing committees in the 116th and 117th Congress. My written testimony summarizes many of the accomplishments of those laws. My testimony also summarizes the current global energy investment landscape as countries ramp up climate action. But climate considerations are not the only driving force behind increased interest in clean energy. Just yesterday, BP's chief global economist pointed to the Russian invasion as a reason that countries are seeking to increase access to domestically produced energy, most of which, he said, will likely come from renewables and other non-fossil fuels. As we've heard, China is leading that clean energy race, and we must catch up. They may be out front now, but the United States can close the gap and to power America in ways that improve our global competitiveness and help solve the climate crisis. American ingenuity is our superpower. Giving up on a technological competition is not the American way. Instead, we need energy and climate solutions that meet the needs of the 21st century, and we need them now. I'll close on a personal note. Many of you who know me from DC may not know that I was born and raised in Corpus Christi, Texas, or that my dad spent his career in the chemical industry and my brother currently works in safety operations for oil and gas. I am well acquainted with the challenges that communities face in balancing energy production and public health, and I know we can do it in a way that find a way forward for a clean energy future that works for everyone and doesn't pit public health against economic security. Thank you.
American ingenuity is our superpower. Next, turn to our final witness, Mr. Robert McNally, President of Rapidan Energy Group. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chair Rogers, Ranking Member Pallone, distinguished members of the committee, I'm Bob McNally, President of Rapidan Energy Group. With the exception of 2.5 years in the Peace Corps and 2 years working for President Bush, I've been an analyst, a historian, and a student of energy markets, policy, and geopolitics. I'd like to briefly summarize my view on where we're headed in oil prices and touch on some energy policies. Let me start with the good news. For the best part of the last 20 years, OPEC is no longer controlling the global oil market. Let me tell you the bad news. For the best part of the last 20 years, OPEC is no longer controlling the global oil market. That's why we're seeing a return of this Space Mountain price volatility. It's paradoxical but true. When the oil market does not have a successful, durable supply manager like OPEC, or before it, the Texas Railroad Commission, oil prices wildly gyrate in boom and bust cycles that hurt our economy, national security, and environment. What to expect in the future as you do your work. More of what we've seen in the past. Oil prices are going to gyrate between 5 to 7 year boom phases when they go up and bust phases when they go down. At the late summer of 2021, we exited a bust phase, lower oil prices, and we're in the foothills of a multi-year boom cycle. President Putin's decision to invade Ukraine hit fast forward on this boom cycle last year, as we saw with $5 gasoline. But oil prices quickly retreated when all the Russian supply we thought we were going to lose did not go offline. Now, the shale boom is a huge economic and security benefit, but it will not insulate our consumers from oil price volatility. Therefore, we cannot retreat into energy isolationism. We must work with allies to support domestic energy production and support infrastructure, bolster free trade, maintain ample stockpiles, and prevent adversaries from holding the world hostage to economy-wrecking disruptions. As we enter this new multi-year boom phase, it's all the more important that we resist or correct policy mistakes. These include old ones, like 1970-era ideas of windfall profits taxes or restricting exports. Look, on the windfall profits taxes, profits are going to go up during booms and down during busts. Seizure of them by the government will only worsen supply and increase prices later. Restricting energy exports will not lower pump prices at all for any meaningful period of time, if at all, for our consumers. Longer term, it will raise them. Restrict export, you get less supply, you get higher prices. Moreover, restricting exports now would help Putin, help Iran, and hurt our allies. Newer errors to resist or correct include an overall shift, unfortunate, from all the above to keep it in the ground. As we enter a boom cycle and face geopolitical risk, it's critical that capital flow back to fossil fuel production, refining and infrastructure. Fossil fuel is 82% of our primary energy supply. Oil alone, 31%. Renewables, they're great, 7%. Policies that delay or impede the return of capital expenditure to fossil energy will only tighten supply-demand balances further and punish consumers with even higher energy prices. Strategic Petroleum Reserve cries out for course correction, members of Congress. At 372 million barrels, the reserve is down by about a half, the lowest in 40 years, due to recent emergency and non-emergency sales. Now, the energy gyrations after Russia's invasion of Ukraine illustrate the folly of frittering away our emergency supplies. To their credit, President Biden and the Congress agreed to cancel 140 million barrels of planned emergency sales. And it signaled an interest in refilling. And Chair Rogers, you shepherded a bill that will also impose restrictions. Finally, and this is often overlooked but very important as you begin your work, I would like to highlight for the committee's attention an overlooked but crucial area for improvement. A large gap has opened between increasingly unrealistic energy transition targets on the one hand and objective and timely analyses required to assess their cost and likelihood on the other. President Biden and some members of Congress have called for outlawing the use of natural gas and coal and electricity by 2035. That's 60% of our generation. It's astounding there has been no cost estimate by EIA of this proposal. Meanwhile, under political pressure, the IEA has ceased providing a policy-neutral reference case scenario and adopted a peak rosy demand scenario. On that basis, they have called for no new investment in oil and gas in the world. I can't think of anything more catastrophic for energy than that. To conclude, our country is blessed with enormous energy resources. The sweats and the smarts exhibited every day by our intrepid energy sector workers underwrite our standard of living. Perilous market and geopolitical conditions may loom, and policy risks certainly abound. But if we leverage realism, pragmatism, and innovation, we can protect our economy, security, and environment. I wish you and your committee success.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll begin the questioning and recognize myself for 5 minutes. Restoring American energy dominance and putting security at the center of our energy policy should be the top priority. And we should be sure that our policies don't put Americans and our allies at strategic disadvantage to geopolitical adversaries like China. The Biden administration's national security strategy, released in October, mentions climate more than 60 times. It talks about, quote, an urgent need to accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels. By contrast, the Chinese president's annual report to the National Congress of the CCP, a few weeks later, only mentions climate twice and warns a gradual withdrawal from traditional energy must be based upon safe, reliable replacements. He talks about less restrictions on fossil fuels. There seems to be a mismatch of priorities here. Mr. DeBar, your testimony makes the point that as a dominant energy producer with an all-of-the-above mindset, America strengthened its national security, lowered prices, and helped drive down carbon emissions. The developing world will continue to demand affordable traditional energy for the next several decades. So does it make sense for the United States to cede its energy dominance in traditional energy to China?
Thank you, Chairwoman, for the question. I would like to make the point that China is absolutely not the benchmark for clean energy. Some people like to point out about how much they manufacture. They produce more emissions than the whole OECD combined, and we lead the world in the reduction of tons of emissions, and China is increasing by 3 times per year than we're cutting. These are just numbers, right? These are just facts. And by far, I wrote a paper at Columbia I published last week, 57% of all the BTUs in China from all energy uses is from coal, and it's going up. It's going up. And so China is not the benchmark, right? They do manufacture some things well, but they are not the benchmark. I wish everyone kind of just knew kind of the fact pattern on that. U.S. leadership for energy allows us flexibility around prices, as we were hearing earlier. And as many people here who are veterans, there are less people in the way than when I was younger, when I was in the military, and it allows flexibility that did not exist, and it allows us, from a security point of view, to support our allies, which if we hadn't been building what we've been building in Texas and elsewhere, we would not be in the place today to help our friends.
Would you speak briefly about how we make sure that we can export our energy and technological innovations like advanced nuclear to developing countries rather than having China and Russia increase their influence?
So, Chair, as Congressman Tonko pointed out, the U.S. leads the way in energy innovation. We need to do better at manufacturing. We're not bad at it, but we can do better. But almost everything that's out there in the world was invented in America. The lithium-ion battery chemistry was funded by DOE and the National Science Foundation. I was there when we won the Nobel Prize for the lithium-ion battery. Drilling technologies, we lead the world in drilling technologies. Solar, thanks to Secretary Chu and DOE, drove down those costs. So the important part is about how do we need to continue to support innovation. We lead the world on that. And we need to figure out how to take some of those and continue to build on our leadership to export.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to Ms. Jackson, and you make a very compelling point about energy affordability. You know, just a recent review of the Energy Information Administration data shows that residential electricity prices up 24% since January 21, industrial rates up over 30%. Would you just talk briefly about why lowering energy prices is so important to the communities that you work with?
You know, minority communities already are at the low end of the spectrum in terms of resources and finances. The average income for for Black Americans is $48,000 a year. They're basically living on about $3,700 a year. They don't have that much extra money to be able to spend on unaffordable energy. It disproportionately impacts their standard of living. We're experiencing the largest decrease in the standard of living that we've ever experienced in my lifetime. We're struggling to be able to pay our bills and be able to go to work. We're struggling to be able to buy food. We're struggling to buy shoes for our kids, clothing. We don't have any extra money left over for even necessities, not luxury items, necessities. And though we want home ownership, but we can't save any money. We want to be able to start our own businesses, but we can't save any money.
Thank you.
Every week, we're in a negative deficit.